human minds at a loss to find out what's going on. I think if we were told what's going on, our human minds would be frazzled, wouldn't they? So we just, as humans, we have to just keep following the guidance. If we all have that belief, we're all creating that in our community. And but just letting it unfold naturally, I think, is really important, because I come across a lot of people that are striving, and it's taking them away from the now, which is where everything happens, of course.
Is we're trying to get our heads around living in a pool of unconscious people. That's a very prevalent trigger when you're day in, day out, like many people now who have already awakened, when you're day in, day out trying to be conscious. You see people numbing and abdicating and projecting and proliferating and controlling and perpetrating on each other, and you're just like, what? You see so much, and it's overwhelming in the extreme, but in a different way.
A number of people are still awakening in their journey and becoming more aware of themselves and the shift in energies. But sending love when someone's wronged you is so counterintuitive to the way that humanity has been for millennia.
And I'm hearing from people more and more, as the unconscious is coming up to be seen, it's acting out in people, and it's how we deal with that. Let's not deal with it in the old way of reacting in the same way and clashing. Let's think, okay, is there a different way?
So for many of us on this planet, we are healing all the ancestral wounds and everything. And so that obviously happened to Edward without even knowing, being able to word it, if you like. He felt it. And it's the feeling that matters. And Edward's probably healing cellular, karmic, ancestral, all of that stuff, and becoming whole. So now he can hand that on to the descendants of the new earth.
Darkness. But if it triggers you, it's about whether it triggers you. Because if it triggers you, then there's a vibrational match. If it doesn't trigger you, then you can observe it from your place of like Zen peace or what have you. But if it triggers you, so our triggers are the biggest gifts.
Okay. Hello, everyone. And I'm really pleased to reconnect with three of the wonderful speakers from the New Earth Summit. We've got the lovely Deborah Jane Sutton. Hi, Deborah.
Hiya.
We've got Edward Fitzgerald. Hi, Edward.
Hello.
And the lovely Sarita Sol. Hi, Sarita.
Hello.
Thank you all for joining me on this panel, Q&A post-summit panel. I was thrilled to have so much positive feedback from the New Earth Summit, and I just want to reiterate again a big thanks to the speakers who did take part, because obviously there would have been no summit without the amazing speakers. So thank you, and thank you again for coming back on for a post Q&A session. Lots and lots of interest for today. We'll take it in turns, but I want this to be a very organic, informal conversation. I'd like to start off with Edward. There's been quite a lot of interest with the documentary you're helping the wonderful Pam Gregory with. Could you talk a little bit about that, and also the other involvements you've got with creating New Earth communities?
Yeah, of course. So we're still very early days in this project. It's actually the concept is from the director Josh Cole and co-director and cinematographer Luke Jacobs. They're both award-winning. They come from the advertising industry, actually, but they've had an awakening. Like a lot of people have, and have specifically Josh has decided that's it. Over the last 4 years, he's devoted his time to creating something new and other projects, both very spiritual. The working title is Creating New Earth, and the concept is very much around trying to share with people, or to capture the input from visionaries and also those communities that are taking active steps to creating the new earth within their own communities. And eventually we will link up with many communities around the world. At the moment, there was some initial filming that's been done in Ireland, Southern Ireland, and just recently in the New Forest. So I hosted the team here, and as you mentioned, Pam was one of the interviewees, Diana Cooper. There was a few other, Adrian, myself, and we're obviously, we don't know. I can't say, because obviously there are going to be a lot of people that are going to be involved over the course of this, over the course of making this. So I may not make the cut. The bits, the sound bites that I've given may not make the final edit, and that might be the same for a number of other people that have been interviewed. But certainly, I'm setting up calls with other communities, so that I have links with the Frequency Village, that is another vision in the Azores, and they're probably slightly ahead of where the community, the conscious communities that I'm currently involved in setting up. I think I alluded to that in my interview. They're still sort of under wraps, but we're still in pilot phase for several of those. And one of them is specifically focused on healthcare, as a focus. And the general theme is about taking responsibility for yourself. So in that case of the healthcare pilot, it's about taking responsibility for your own health, your own medical records, and then moving through, but also the educational pieces of that as well, or the learning. I tried to stop using the word education because it's a misdescription. It's of the old system. I prefer learning.
Yeah.
But,
no, I'd agree. Thank you. And it's a bit of a mirror of what the People's Health Alliance are doing as well. It's all about, isn't it, all taking back responsibility, but within the support of our communities. And that for me is how we are all individually creating our new earth away from the old paradigm. And it's been a way of, well, we've been educated to give our power away to an external authority, haven't we? And also educated to believe we haven't got that power ourselves. We haven't got those skills, so we can't heal ourselves. We've got no power or authority. So that's wonderful, and it does really remind me of the work of the PHA as well. So yes, keep us in the loop with that and how it goes. That sounds very exciting. Thank you for sharing that, Edward.
Yeah, obviously the focus is not just around health. That's just one of the aspects we wanted to try, just to iron out any teething problems with the framework that I've envisaged, or I hate to use the word download, but it's come from somewhere. I'm just the channel for it.
Intuitive.
Intuitive, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it reminds me as well, Medina from Arise Humanity, who was also a speaker on the summit, she's doing something very similar in Australia. And I think she's calling it New Earth documentary or New Earth Visionaries. And she's basically going around communities in Australia about exactly these kind of things, New Earth initiatives, people taking back their own power. And that's how we do it, isn't it? That's how we create our new earth, one person at a time, taking those steps, no matter how small. That does lead me on to, it wasn't actually a question, it was just a perception I made, and it's something I've used, which both Sarita and Deborah had talked about in their interviews, which was just the willingness to choose, to make a difference, to make it one step towards self-love, working on yourself, making your life a better place. I think that's underestimated. how powerful that is and what a shift that can do. Even if you don't think you're making a difference, just that willingness to have a go. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Deborah? And then we'll go on to Sarita.
Yeah, sure. My love of willingness, it's an energy, everything's an energy, right? And if we refer to the map of consciousness, which we talked about before, it comes in at 310, which is just at the beginning of the expansion stage. That's what makes it so powerful, is because we've come out of a state of contraction. And you might not know what's ahead of you, but it's just that, you know, understanding that there's something more to life than the one that you're living, but you're not quite sure what, but you're willing to find out. You know, willing to be laughed at, willing to be wrong, you know, willing to dive deep into the inner work. I mean, there's a lot of willingness available to us, and that is the gateway, because it is the beginning of the expansion. And of course, when we expand, we're not just, you know, it's not just about raising our frequency, it's about literally broadening our bandwidth, isn't it? And so we're literally expanding our level of consciousness, which is everything, really, isn't it? Because that's what's helping us shift our thinking. As you said, a lot of people that don't realize that they have the power. So yeah, and you can't really tell people. People don't really change just by being told, right? They have to experience it. But that's where these communities are great, and these kind of panels are great, because the right words will arrive in the right ears at the right time, like it has for all of us, right? And it continues to do so. So willingness is obviously a major part. But also this willingness, I think, to let things be and to let things evolve. Because listening to Edward about the communities and the PHA, which obviously I'm very supportive of, but where I live in the Costa Blanca North, we have an amazing community, but it's just completely organic. No one's actually come in to say, let's do it this way. No one. I mean, it's people just turn up, and if you ask anyone that's come in the area, we go, what made you move here? A lot of people will say, I have no idea. You know, and it was myself included. It's like, I don't know, I had to buy this piece of land. I don't know. It's like Edward said, it's all coming through us, isn't it? Not really from us. And I think our human minds are the last to find out what's going on. I think if we were told what's going on, our human minds would be frazzled, wouldn't they? So we just, as humans, we have to just keep following the guidance. But it's an amazing community, and just willing to shift your beliefs and do things differently. But also remembering that everybody is creating their own individual reality. It's just that with our collective beliefs, we're creating the beautiful collective, the community. You know, it's when we all choose to believe, because we choose our beliefs, right? That's our creative power. And when we choose to believe the same thing, as in, you know, grassroots up and living the new earth, and, you know, our individual heaven on earths might be a little bit different, but the fundamental, you know, communities that are governed by love and kindness and things like that, you know, if we all have that belief, we're all creating that in our community. And but just letting it unfold naturally, I think, is really important, because I come across a lot of people that are striving, and it's taking them away from the now, which is where everything happens, of course. But I mean, I have a group of people in the Costa Blanca North. I mean, it's magic and miracles. You know, we had the fires last year, and there was no rain forecast, and we just got together, and this cloud came in, landed on the fire and went out again. And it's just like, yeah, and if I'm not feeling well, I know exactly who to go to. You know, I've got so many energy healers around me. And then we know where to get our organic fruit and vegetables from, because people are all going organic, and the farmers are really excited about growing all this stuff. So it's like we kind of end up knowing where to go to get what we need, but it's happened really quite organically. But I think it's really beautiful how that is falling into place.
Thank you for that. It is, and we talk about we're creating and birthing these new earth energies, but actually it's going back to kind of how it used to be in a way, isn't it? Because we've lost so many of those ancient healing modalities. Sarita, a good time to welcome you into the conversation as our shaman in on this panel. What would you say about this willingness and openness just to change, just to step forward? And like you said, Deborah, not in a pushing, forceful, striving way, because that's the wrong energy, that's a contracted energy, but with that more expansive energy. What would you say, Sarita?
Well, I think it's quite poignant that health has come up quite a lot in the first few minutes of this conversation, because what I see is that there are a lot of people, obviously due to what happened in the last 4 years, who were kind of forced to expand their awareness and look at the state of their health and their own healing. And I think that that's an intrinsic part of the ascension process and what will bring communities together. Because what I see is that people, first of all, they need to notice that they feel slightly wrong in their bodies. They don't have enough energy. They're kind of ill all the time. They're abdicating their responsibility and their power outwards. And it's not fixing or healing them or making themselves feel better. So they're striving to find other modalities. And the path of community and assisting one another is always going to begin with self-healing, because it's only when you clear your body up, that's the only thing that you can be truly responsible for, your body and your mind. When you clean that up on every level, physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically, and spiritually, you then step into your purpose, because you become this clear channel. And the purpose, of course, for all of us as a collective species is going to assist one another. So healing is an intrinsic first step, whether you decide you're going to do anything, whether you're going to set up a community or you're going to teach children, or it doesn't matter what you do. But if you're not, if you haven't healed the separation consciousness inside you, that dis-ease, and actually it's holding lies in your body that causes disease, because they rub up against you and they create all this friction. So when you start to recognize them, take responsibility, and start to look elsewhere for healing, that's when you become a clearer channel. Your purpose and your path opens up to you, and then you can step into assisting the collective. So I don't think it's, bizarre that a lot of awakening happened in the corona, the crowning thing, which we obviously created for our own ascension path. And I don't think it's unusual that a lot of the initial coming together happened online. It happened worldwide. And now what's happening from that, as Edward is alluding to, is you're seeing these communities that are physically being birthed around the world. And we need kind of all of these little steps. And what I'm doing now, which is, I've sort of got a funny community going here as well now, which just happened organically, but I'm teaching people to become healers, to teach people to heal themselves. So I don't heal people anymore. And I don't teach people to heal people. I teach people to help people heal themselves.
Yeah.
And that's a very different slant on, if you like, ancient tools. Because in ancient times, the healers would heal people. Shamans categorically sort of merged with their clients, and the healing went through the shaman, and then the client would be healed. And I just see that everything has shifted now, and people need to stand in their sovereign power, and step up and take on that responsibility. But I think it all starts from healing.
Yeah.
I really do. It makes you a clean and clear, responsible human being. And that's where it all begins. And I think the communities, and it's wonderful that Edward's doing that documentary, it will come more and more. And with Deborah, you know, like she's saying, there's this willingness, but we need to put the practical applications in place. I'm very like Capricorn, practically minded, you know. If there's not tools, I can't see the point of just listening. But there is, as you said, actually, we were talking about this before we came on, just listening to these types of conversations gives you light bulbs about how you could practically, remember, we're earthlings, so, you know, we're very practical as well. We have to survive on this planet. How you can practically incorporate these new ideas into your reality. So I think I might have gone off topic or around the houses a bit, but that's what I sort of feel like responding to, as, you know, from what I've heard.
Yeah, thank you. So it's kind of like, it is taking these old ways of healing, but within this new energy, which I agree is much more sovereign based now. It is completely, as we're coming into the age of Aquarius, it is about sovereignty, taking that self-responsibility. And it does all start, that has been a big theme. In fact, it was probably the biggest theme from the summit was, it's an inside job, working on yourself, that self-love, then it radiates out into the collective. And I think we were all trying to, before in the old paradigm, thinking we need to fix the external to make us feel better. And we got it kind of back to front, and it's all actually about it. And it's still a big thing. It took a long time for me to truly understand that at a visceral level. I got it cognitively, but it's like, yeah, but actually it's so true, the power of that. And I also just want to say to people, when you were speaking, Sarita, as well, about the things we can do, yes, it is so practical as well. Working on ourselves is also a practical thing to do, but it can be something, it can be little small steps. It might, you know, people, we're conditioned as well, aren't we, as a society, to come up with the excuses because we've been trained to actually look outside for help. So people, I always get a but, I live in an apartment, but you can grow a little, you know, box of herbs or something. There's, you know, something you can do. There's something everybody can do. You can go and help, you know, ask a lady down the street who you've noticed is struggling, maybe does she need help with her shopping. There's so many little tiny things we can do which will increase our own vibration, and it ripples out so much, which we can't see, we have to believe, because it's happening, and we'll believe it more and more when we see it more and more. But it's taking that self-responsibility yourself every morning. What can I do today? And having that openness is one thing. That does lead us nicely to a question I had for Edward, actually, because shadow work came up a lot in the summit. Tanzin from Melbourne, because you talked about, Edward, in your interview, that you didn't really know what self-love was until you'd done a lot of work on yourself to develop self-love. She wanted to know what, I mean, you talked about meditation. She said, was there any other shadow work or inner work that you did? And also, do you still get psychic attacks?
No, I don't get psychic attacks anymore. And I don't know, I can't remember whether I said in the interview, when I recognised who they were coming from, I just sent a huge amount of love to them, because obviously they needed to be healed. And I think as I, you know, that was probably that was just what's more than a year ago that those were happening. But I also recognised psychic attacks in other people, so I've sort of helped those people identify them and then move through those. On the self-love thing, it was a bit like the recovering from my self-healing from the brain injury. I didn't know what I was doing. I tried lots of different things, Some friends ran some tantra workshops. And so that journey for me was, I know normally people think about it, you go there as partners. For me, it was just a journey of understanding energy, the energetic self, how I could control the energy within me. I could balance everything. Probably there are other modalities I could have used for that. Obviously meditation was a huge one for the self-healing.
Yeah.
And I can't recall whether there was lots of different things. So, part of that self-love, I can't remember whether I shared it in the interview or whether that made the final cut, but I had, my mother had just died. My wife split up with me whilst I was caring for my mum in the last 6 weeks of her life. I then threw myself into another project as my modality as the old me. And I was working, sort of getting 3 hours sleep, launching something called Jobs Not Jabs, which was to try and help people in the healthcare industry. And then there was some betrayals that went along during that period. Plus I had, I think it was just coming up for the 3rd court hearing for, over the, to deal with the, sort of child arrangements and things. And in one meditation, so this I know came from my higher self, because there's absolutely no way that in that frame of mind that I had at that time, and this was during the month that I was doing the self-healing. In one meditation, my ex-wife was in a boat in a complete darkness, as though it was in space, and I was just pushing the boat off with her in it, and with huge amounts of love, thanking her, her higher self for the journey and the learnings. And I was in tears afterwards, because that wasn't something that was, there was quite a very unpleasant 8 months, and that certainly wouldn't have been in my psyche at the time, but it was so healing. It was healing. So I think in the shadow work, love, not just of self, but a love of others, the ability to let go, the ability to just love those that have hurt you, just as a mechanism. I don't know whether Deborah and Sarita Sol have had similar experiences with their work, but certainly that was my personal experience and personal journey. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does, and it's massive, isn't it? That forgiveness, and it's not, people get it confused with condoning behaviour, and it's not about that at all. It's actually freeing yourself, isn't it? And a situation happened to me right before, I was literally minutes before I was going to interview Adrian, and I was in quite a state about it, and he said, "You want to rearrange?" And I said, no. And it was a situation where I came across what I judge as, I realise it's a judgment, of unconscious behaviour from our local farmer, suddenly saying he's going to the trees on our boundary, beautiful oak trees, 200 years old. He suddenly decided, they're mine. I'm going to take the fence down on Monday and chop the trees down. Well, I went into such a state. The paddocks where we have the horses are right there, so they would have been able to escape onto the road. That's the only boundary, and I just couldn't believe it. And Adrian was one of the final speakers, and I'd already done so much. I transformed during these summit interviews. I really did. And I just, a bit like you were saying with your ex-wife in that meditation, that's not how you really would have responded. And I feel, I just felt, God, I wanted some help. My normal knee-jerk would have gone to that fight. And my husband was like, we're not having this, we're going to the gendarmes and the local mairie, which we did. But I knew the energy was different. I knew we had a choice about how to deal with this. We could have gone through the conflict route, which would have created more conflict. I just intuitively thought this is a kind of almost like a test to see how much I've taken on from all these wonderful teachings from the speakers. And I did use Jackie's, well, she talked about it, obviously it's not her, Ho'oponopono, which I find does diffuse so much anger. There's something about it. It kind of takes you away from it, and you just see the kind of learning and healing process within it. And I knew this was happening for a reason. So I kind of did both, but I said to my husband, I said, look, we've created this back to what Deborah talks about. And he's like, how? Because people find that so difficult, don't they, to get their heads around. I said, on an energetic level, we've created this situation. And it's still we've had the mediator involved, but we are sending the farmer, the couple, lots of love, and it has diffused. It's got to the point now that, okay, we accept the trees are yours, we still want to take the fence down. But I think if we'd have gone in, with their energy, I don't know what, I think they'd have still been wanting the trees, if that makes sense. So I think it diffuses things. And I did the Ho'oponopono, I'm sorry, I love you, I forgive you. And people often can't say I love you, but thank you for this situation. You can tweak it. I did ask Jackie that if you can tweak certain parts of it. Again, it comes back to that willingness to actually look for a more peaceful resolution to these situations. So I do know what you mean about finding a different way of managing these situations where apparently, and I'm hearing from people more and more, as the unconscious is coming up to be seen, it's acting out in people, and it's how we deal with that. Let's not deal with it in the old way of reacting in the same way and clashing. Let's think, okay, is there a different way? And it helped me. It actually calmed me down. It would have calmed the situation down. And it was only a couple of months ago, and they have calmed down. They're backing off. You know what I mean? And it's how we react. So yes, it's helped us, that reaction. Has anybody?
I was just about to say
that?
I was just about to add that how the realization for me at that point was how counterintuitive it would have been for my old self. So I don't know if, I know a number of people are still awakening in their journey and becoming more aware of themselves and the shift in energies. But sending love when someone's wronged you is so counterintuitive to the way that humanity has been for millennia. There's always that sort of, unless you're, spiritually guided but if you were like me down in the trenches, that wouldn't have been my reaction of, before this journey.
Yes, Sarita.
Yeah, and just following on from Edward, I would say that that's because for however many, I don't know, thousands of years, we've been stuck in our head. So we've been stuck in this kind of fight or flight, competition, survival at all costs mechanism. And so I think, you're saying Ho'opono, Edward's saying sending love, but really, if we can learn to just drop our awareness out of the head and into either the heart or the heart center, sort of dropping your awareness down into the body, because the body just can't lie, doesn't lie. The heart will never lie to you. If you can just spend a few moments, practical moments a day, just doing heart coherence, breathing into your heart, or just feeling how your body is reacting to something. And what it does is it just gives you moments where you're not in activated beta brainwave state of fight or flight that you must attack to survive, or you're going to die kind of thing. And so just practically, if you can spend a few moments a day just doing a heart-based meditation, what happens is you learn to respond, just like you did, Alison, to a situation rather than react. And you were lucky because you happened to be in your overriding situation was you'd been receiving all of this information from people who'd been practicing essentially being present and conscious and conscientious. So that impacted you. So you had enough time not to immediately react. Yeah. So you reined it in and you gave yourself a few moments, you gave yourself a pause, and you had the willingness and you responded instead. And just giving yourself that pause to come into presence, it's an amazing gift, and it's a practice. Yeah. You know, we have to practice this because we've been so indoctrinated to go into battle. And so I think the very first thing that people can do is to practice and to practice and to practice, even if it's 3 minutes a day, something tiny, because it gives you something to hold on to when everything around you seems insurmountable and traumatizing. And I think also for many people who've been practicing this a lot already, the trigger that we're all dealing with, or what I certainly see in the circles that I'm now in, is we're trying to get our heads around living in a pool of unconscious people. Yeah. That's a very prevalent trigger when you're day in, day out, like many people now who have already awakened, when you're day in, day out trying to be conscious, you see people numbing and abdicating and projecting and proliferating and controlling and perpetrating on each other, and you're just like, what? You see so much, and it's overwhelming in the extreme, but in a different way. And so then what I believe the practice there is to hold more presence inside your body. And that's what Edward's alluding to. It's holding an awareness of how you're feeling and loving yourself, even though you're activated and triggered and freaking out and vulnerable, and your normal individuated self would rather say go to hell to the X. Even, and loving all of those broken bits of you, that's what those who've already awakened need to do. And the ones who are just beginning to awake need to practice dropping into the body. And so I think in practical terms, that's what we can offer ourselves at this point in our evolution.
Thank you. That's such a good point. Yeah. And the fact that we've training ourselves to realize we have that choice. We don't have to do that automatic knee-jerk reaction that we've been trained to do within this matrix. We have got that other choice now. And it is just stepping back. Going back to Pam Gregory again, I love her quote of sitting on the eagle's perch, observing, almost like when you're in that situation, just detach a little bit, almost like you're watching the situation happening. Take away, detach a little bit from it. Are you wanting to say something, Deborah? I thought you were.
Not like me to wait for permission. So many things. I agree with everything. But it is reminding me of that Albert Einstein quote that said, you cannot solve a problem at the level of consciousness that it was created. And that's why we're all saying what we're saying about take a breath, drop into the heart, as Sarita is saying. There was a famous yogi, I can't remember his name now, but he always said there is nothing that can't be improved by taking a breath. And so I totally agree. You just take a nice deep breath, drop into the heart, which has a lot more sense in it than the mind, as we know. And I love what Edward was saying about, this is his higher self. And I think one of the great teachings is about understanding that we are fundamentally, our essence is our higher self, and that are humans. And this helps with self-love, I think, a lot. Understanding that our humans, again, Albert Einstein said, our humans are the instrument through which our soul plays its music. And I think when you have that relationship between your higher self and your human, it helps you see your human with all its lack and limitation, but it helps you see it as a child. And this really helped me love Deborah, because I see her as a child. She doesn't know a lot, but luckily, like Edward, she's tuned into her higher self, and I've learned not to ask questions. just let it go, just flow through. It's your higher self flowing through you. And I think opening that gateway to your own higher self is the secret to all of this. And I mean, Sarita mentioned earlier on about healing, and I love this about healing because everything is healing for me. It's one of my themes, and you know, my two books both talking about healing and everything. And then I got to the stage where it was like, but are we healing? Are we not already perfect? You know, and then you think, okay, what does healing mean to you? But as Sarita said, healing for me is also like a cleansing, and it's a cleansing of those trapped emotions, isn't it? And a cleansing of those limiting beliefs. And enlightening the body. And obviously Sarita has her own ways of doing that, and we all, you know, sort of gravitate towards our own way of doing that. I'm a massive fan of the emotion code, as you know, Alison. With the emotion code, you know, that's been my go-to to clear out those trapped emotions, which raises your frequency, which then expands your level of consciousness, which means you connect with your higher self. So it is, you know, it's all connected. And we can, well, my generation, I think, have been working on this clearing the density from within us, which is so important, because if we understand the 7 Hermetic principles, which are the laws that govern the creation of the universe, we know that there's, you know, as above, so below, as within, so without. It's not as without, so within, is it? It's as within, so without. So when we see these things outside of us that we don't like, you know, we have to ask, where is that inside of me? You know, even though it's on a lesser scale. So we might look at, you know, greedy politicians or greedy company owners or what have you, manipulative or what have you. And then you have to say, well, okay, I'm not greedy like that. I'm not manipulative like that. But where are we manipulative? Where are we greedy? Just eating more than we need, or just trying to control the outcome of a situation is manipulation, right? So it's like, even though it's on a smaller scale, the people outside of us are holding mirrors up to us. And I heard this recently. Sorry, I'm going off on one now. But I heard this. This is a bit of magic that happened lately. Somebody referring to the parasites outside of us. And of course, parasites is quite a good word, right? To describe, I call it the density, but let's, you know, if we're going to talk about the darkness. But if it triggers you, it's about whether it triggers you. Because if it triggers you, then there's a vibrational match. If it doesn't trigger you, then you can observe it from your place of like Zen peace or what have you. But if it triggers you, so our triggers are the biggest gifts that we can have. So I got triggered, like when someone referred to the parasites, I was like, yeah, they are parasitic, aren't they? Living off our fear, living off, you know, our energy. And then it was like, oh, I'm triggered, I must have parasites within me. So I kind of like checked, muscle tested. A lot of people have parasites, I think. But this is how the magic works, because everything comes into my reality when I need it. I had a client in my tent in the garden retreat, and I was teaching her the sway test in order to do the emotion code. And I was offering her things to test as practice, and I showed her some supplements, and she said, oh, I don't take supplements. If I need the energy of a supplement, I just call for the frequency in meditation. And I was just like, wow, that's cool, isn't it? Very next day, I'm watching a video about parasites, right? And then the very next day, I'm watching one that tells you the ingredients that you need, right? The black walnut, wormwood, clove bud, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so I'm searching for it. This is the one I need. Do I need this? Yes. Shall I buy it? No. And I'm like, why am I not buying this? And then this client came to my mind, because you're going to call in the energy. And I was like, is that going to work? Right? If you believe it, it's going to work, right? If you believe it, because the universe is governed by frequency, the belief frequency, right? I'm like, okay, I'm going to believe it. Called in the energy of these ingredients. I felt really nauseous, which I thought was strange at first. And then I was like, oh my God, this isn't strange. This is perfect. It's a parasite cleanse. And then I was really guided not to muscle test for 24 hours. I just do as I'm told. As I said, Deborah doesn't know anything. I just keep following the guidance. And then 24 hours later, did a muscle test, and no parasites. And I was like, oh my God, this is magic. This is what they called magic before. But it's based on belief, isn't it? And it's based on the fact that I understand that everything I need comes to me. So the whole thing is orchestrated by my higher self. You know, sometimes I feel like the higher realms are laughing at me because it's like, she's a bit slow. She's only just realized this. But like the client comes at the right time, the video comes at the right time, everything just comes at the right time for me to be able to perform this magic. And I think that's kind of that's an important part of the journey. But if I can also just say, sorry, because Sarita also talked about purpose. And I think that's really important point. You were saying, if you're a teacher, you're doing this, or if you're, you know, and I think this is one of the big things, because I think there's two ways of healing. One is to do their work, the practice, the tools, you know, the cleansing, however you may do that with whichever energy healing modalities, you know, are available or that you resonate with. But the other way is literally just to follow your joy. Follow your joy, follow what excites you, follow what lights you up. I mean, for me, it's tarot, of course, you know, and well, lots of things light me up. But, you know, if you follow that, that's going to expand you in itself. And when I'm doing the soul readings, I'm reading the soul, I get given what their gifts are, what their divine gifts are, and what they came here to experience and express in this lifetime. And when I share that with people, you know, people often say, oh, I love doing that. I'm like, of course you love doing that. It's what your gift is. You came here to share that, you know. Oh, I'd love to spend all day doing that. Well, then what's stopping you? It's like you said, Alison, it's these limiting beliefs, isn't it? Then I kind of put their dominant gifts together and think, okay, looking at these gifts, your ideal job would be something like ABC, or your ideal activity. It's not so much a job, is it? It's an activity, just how do you want to be? And people will go, oh, that's my perfect job. And I'm like, well, why are you not doing it? Oh, no, because I've been told to work really hard all week and that money doesn't come easily, and all these limiting beliefs come out. So finding your purpose is actually just following your joy, isn't it? Because we're all so unique. I love the uniqueness. I love the way that we're all one, working together, but within that, the uniqueness is just so beautiful, isn't it? That we're all doing our own thing. And when you're doing what you came here to do, that's when you're aligning with your divinity. And then what you do, whether you're saying and doing and whatever, is just an expression of the divine itself coming through you. And that's when everything falls into place. It's a beautiful place to be, right?
Yeah, thank you. And that's addressing one of the biggest programs, isn't it? That we need to work to live, to earn the money, and work does not equate to something we love.
Oh, definitely, you know, because you know that I went to a private school, right? So I'm like, we often incarnate into families that are completely opposite to what, you know, where we're going, because the purpose is to find out who we really are against all the, you know, the programming. But I was there, but you know, when everyone talks about what do you want to be when you're older, you know, no one's going to say, I want to read tarot from a tent in the garden. And yet that's where I find myself fulfilling, you know, emotionally fulfilled, fulfilling my abundance and everything, reading tarot from a tent in the garden. But I wasn't brought up to believe that, was I?
Exactly. But I think it goes back to that being open and willing to get into that expansive state more, to at least be willing. I think when we're in that matrix of, I think we all have been, I certainly was, it's a very contracted state based on powerlessness, thinking and it is thinking that, well, I need this 9 to 5 job because I need to pay the mortgage and the bills. I can't do what I love. My love is horses and working with people with their beliefs. And I just had this belief that I couldn't do that and earn a living. And it's breaking those down. They are breaking down now, but they're firmly fixed and rooted. And that does, I love these interviews because they always weave and lead into the one of the questions or talking points. Because Lorna from Wales wants to know, well, I'll leave that first question actually, and it's alluding to what we've just been talking about. How do we create our own reality when the external is so chaotic and unpredictable? And I was working with somebody yesterday who had suddenly she'd been doing so well, but this internet, I don't even know what happened. There was some big internet outage or something last week, and it affected lots of businesses. It didn't affect me. I don't know if it was just in the States, I'm not sure, but she's in the UK. But it brought her right back into such a contracted, fearful state because she earns her living online. And what do we do? I can't control that. Can I would be working on raising her vibrations, attracting, from where she's currently vibrating. And she went right back into complete fear, which is what the Matrix is designed to do. When people are making a breakthrough, something like that will come in. So I said to her yesterday, I'll ask Deborah what the reaction to that is when something like that does happen. And I did say, look, if you've got that general belief that you're safe, we've worked a lot on safety with her, especially that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. She went right back into survival. And I said, the contracted state, you'll attract it. Let's work on getting it back up. What would you say, Deborah?
I would say it's trust and understanding that everything is happening for your own benefit, but the universe will bring you what you need. It doesn't always bring you what you think you want. It's her human that thought that she had to work online. If you're meant to do something, if you're meant to make a move in the right direction towards your soul's desires, not your programmed human desires, if you're meant to make a move and you're not making that move, the universe will push you. Simple as that. That's why we have tower card moments. So she was not trusting that everything's happening for her benefit. If I'm meant to be working online and the internet goes down, then I just assume I'm not meant to be working online. It's as simple as that. Now, when you understand that time is only an illusion in the third and fourth dimension, then you can't worry about, but I've got this deadline and I've got to get this done by this time. You can't have that stress when you understand that time doesn't really exist, and that we're all creating our own reality. And it's like Doctor Who said, which is very true. I always knew that Doctor Who was true, but he said about time being wibbly wobbly lines, and it is. So the first thing to do is when shit hits the fan, and I had this 3 years ago, right? When shit hit the fan, the first thing is just like, okay, so something's going on, but I know, I have an inner knowing, and I trust that the universe is taking me where I need to go, and it's going to be bigger and better than I could ever dream of. And that's exactly what happened to me when I ended up in Pago in this mobile home. You talked about a mortgage and having to make money. Simple thing, sell the house, get a mobile home. And then you can be free and secure and all those lovely, energies. But, everything was upside down for me, including my marriage. And I had an inner knowing. It's an inner knowing that I'm going where I'm meant to be going. I had no idea I was meant to be birthing the garden retreat. They hadn't told me that bit. I thought I was going traveling. So have an inner knowing that when something knocks you back, it's a tower card moment. And remember, the arrow always gets pulled back before it goes forward. So it's trusting. I think the answer is trust and understanding that the universe is going to give you what you need, which isn't always what your human thinks you want. But in the bigger picture, this is why let go, surrender, these are powerful processes, I know they're easier said than done. I do appreciate that. But that's the way to go, because then you can just let go of all that human worry and stress, and let your higher self guide the way by focusing on the heart, as Sarita said, focusing on the heart.
Yeah, letting go, trusting, surrendering. If I think of my wish list, my vision board 10 years ago, it's nothing like where I am now. But actually, I know I'm in a much better space for me and a better situation than that list that I made for myself. And I did let go actually 10 years ago, and it's powerful. It's powerful. You'll always, I've always been looked after. When I stepped out of my comfort zone, I left the job, I left the security. I would never have imagined I'd be where I am today. But you have got to trust you will always be looked after. If you're fearful and contracted, unfortunately, that's what you'll attract. So yes, thank you for answering that. I did just want to, I'm mindful of time, I want to try and keep it to around an hour. I did have, with you, Sarita, the majority of questions were around the soul parts. And who asked this? Michael from Toronto asks about soul parts, and he basically incorporated all the other questions. Where do they go? What are they doing? Can they come back on their own? Can we heal without them? And what if they don't want to come back?
Just a massive question then. Okay, so for those who perhaps didn't see the interview, I'm talking about soul loss. And just to put it in context, imagine that your body is like a glass, it's a container, and inside your body is your essence or your soul. And what I see more and more on the healing journey for all of us, it's about integrating all of the soul parts that we have lost along the way through abdicating our responsibility, through trauma, just through all of the plethora of things that we deal with as we're learning and remembering who we are. So the idea is that eventually you become wholly integrated, so you're sovereign. So when soul parts leave through trauma, and on their way out, they leave holes in your auric field, and they just leave because it's become too painful to stay in your body. And sometimes it's necessary for a soul part to leave. Let's say you're in a massive accident and every limb in your body was broken. Your soul would just go, I've just got to go. I can't cope with the pain. And then you would start to heal and everything. Now, if you were fully conscious, the soul part would come back at the end of that healing process. But soul parts, we're often not conscious that our soul parts have left us. So let's say you were verbally abused by a parent when you were young, and it was just too painful to be told that all of the time, and your 6-year-old self just reached this point where it left. Okay, it goes into, if you like, generally the fourth dimension, but it could go into higher dimensions. So the fourth dimension is the unseen realm, or the big soup of energy that we're wandering around in. It's the dreamscape. It's where demons and ghosts and all of those things reside. It's where the angelic realm can come down and talk to us. It's where the elementals live. There's a lot of stuff going on in non-ordinary reality, in that invisible realm. So soul parts go into non-ordinary reality. Now, if they were to go into fifth dimension or higher, they might go, ooh, it's lovely here. I'm in oneness, or I'm in the place where, I don't know, reality's a birth. I'm not going back there. I'm not going back to abuse. I'm staying right here. It's absolutely lovely. So often they don't want to come back. Often they get lost. So if you have a soul part that's been verbally abused, it may go, for example, and go and hide in, it might go and hide in the middle realm, which is like a ghost-like third dimensional realm, down a well, let's say. because it wants to go and hide in the darkness where no one else can be mean to it. And if it hides there long enough, it just might forget how to get out. It's, anything could happen. There's a lot of other consciousnesses and things floating about. So they can get lost, they can get trapped. Soul parts can get kidnapped. I once retrieved the soul part of a baby for someone, and a group of, they're called they're not the White Hats, I'm mixing something up. They're the White Brotherhood. A portion of an offshoot of the White Brotherhood has seen this beautiful soul part, extracted it from someone who was having a really traumatic childhood, and were bathing off the light from this soul part and worshipping it in a cave. I mean, that's essentially kidnap. They thought they were doing a really good thing. So there's all kinds of things that can happen to soul parts, because you're dealing with a lot of entities and energies that we can't see or even understand or comprehend. So soul parts will come back, and generally people land at my door when they've done enough inner work. So in other words, they've integrated the verbal abuse, they've forgiven the person who did the verbal abuse, they're loving themselves, and they've created a space now that's safe for the soul part to come back. So generally people land at my door when the primary piece is ready to come back. So let's say this was the 6-year-old piece. So I would help them integrate that. Now, you do not always need a shaman or a healer to help you. If you do enough inner work and you are sensitive enough to be able to sit in your own physical energy and integrate your childhood aspects or whatever, soul parts will spontaneously come back to you. But generally, the primary piece, once the primary piece is back, you will get more spontaneous soul retrieval that comes back. Now, let's say in this case, it was a 6-year-old self. Because we know that time is not actually linear, that's a construct that we created, Deborah's alluded to that. You may get, the primary piece may be a 6-year-old self, but you may then retrieve spontaneously fetuses of yourself or parts that were younger and or older, because it's not linear, okay? But what tends to happen is the primary soul loss sets up the pattern for more soul loss. So if you received abuse and you learned that to leave was a kind of numbing tactic and you could cope with the abuse till you were an adult and leave the home, let's say, so it was necessary at the time, but once you're an adult, that's not going to serve you in your relationships, is it? You're now running from abuse. So everything the way you receive love, the way you give love, your whole life is filtered through a layer of abuse, of loss from abuse. So you may be abusive, you may believe that you're a victim, you may call in perpetrators into your life and your relationships, stuff like that. So what happens is you set up these patterns that run from what you think is love. That's really what it is. So you set up this, and basically you're in a way, you're creating more and more soul loss. So once you retrieve the soul part and you do more and more inner work, the soul pieces can come back. So it is a very complicated and nuanced field, if you like, of energy work. But I believe that many of us are suffering from soul loss, and it is absolutely 100% possible to heal. And no, you don't need a shaman to do it. You can do it spontaneously. But there are other parts to that, because the other thing is, because nature abhors a vacuum, what happens is when you have a gap, something will come in that is a match to that resonant frequency. So if you're holding loss or abuse, you may receive an entity or an earthbound spirit or anything that is holding that resonant match to that. So it could be, again, someone that's been abused, someone who's lost, someone who perpetrates. It could be anything. But as you do your inner work, what happens then, you become more and more sovereign. With sovereignty comes being well boundaried. discernment, the ability to say no in the appropriate place. And as you do that, things that don't belong in your energy field leave and they go back to where they come from. And that opens up space for soul parts to be reintegrated. So it's a multifaceted healing. And then when we're whole, just to finish, we understand that everything is within us. And then we have more access to the divine and to source consciousness, which is the wholeness. So I hope I fitted everything in. I don't know, it's
That was great. That was...
field, but hopefully that's given him, the questioner, a bit of insight.
I think so, yes. Yes, Edward. I
I
feel
was
like
just
a
gonna
teacher
say-
again at school. Yes, Edward.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Sarita, you articulated, I think, my life. So, and it's made context for me. It's given me great context to, perhaps that's why I was open to spiritual text, because I'd gone through quite a period of loss, and betrayal, and all the things that I was meant to learn and heal from. So that's probably why I feel completely different now. Different parts of me have come back.
And why no one can perpetrate or infringe upon your energy.
Yeah, there's no
field.
gaps anymore.
Yeah. And I'd just like to add as a final thing is I think a lot of people here now are doing this work, even if they're unconscious of it, because it feels like, and it is actually for many people, the end of karmic cycles. Because when we move into a fifth dimensional consciousness, that's unity consciousness. And in unity consciousness, there's no fractalization. I don't even know if that's a word, or separation. So for many of us on this planet, we are healing all the ancestral wounds and everything. And so that obviously happened to Edward without even knowing, being able to word it, if you like. He felt it. And it's the feeling that matters. And Edward's probably healing cellular, karmic, ancestral, all of that stuff and becoming whole. So now he can hand that on to the descendants of the new earth. Yeah.
I totally agree with that, Sarita, because I have been doing a lot of it. Gets deeper and deeper, doesn't it? The healing journey. And it does get quite karmic, and there's past life stuff and there's ancestral stuff, like you said. And so it can be quite deep, and it's about breaking those patterns and everything else. But I've noticed recently, I had a client come, and when I tuned into her, I just felt this lightness and this clarity. And I was like, she doesn't have any karma. I was like, wow, there's no karma. And I was really surprised because, I do the past life healing, and I'm like, where's your karma? She'd not had any past lives on earth, right? But obviously she's come in at this time to help. But it was that feeling like, oh my God, I've not experienced that before. And then I was talking to my good friend and mentor, and she was saying, yes, but for you to have that in your reality, you've clearly cleared yours. And it's been a long journey, right? I've been on this healing path for a while. I've written about it, And it was just like, oh my God, yes. So I think you're spot on there. I'm just beginning to meet people that either they've come in free of karma because that's their purpose as a starseed or what have you, or I'm realizing that with this inner work that we've been talking about, we do clear karma. And when you're karma free, I think that's, again, what's going to take you, like you say, to fifth dimensional levels of consciousness or connection to your higher self, or however we want to word it. But yeah, I think clearing the karma is very important.
Thank you all. Yeah, you've made such brilliant points. And I have observed that I feel we're in that time now. It is all coming up, the term inner work, inner healing, journeying, shadow work. They're all really buzzwords at the moment. Well, they weren't a while ago, were they? And I feel it's happening because unconsciously, in many cases, it's coming up for people. And there's just this innate feeling that I feel I want to reach out and do something. And they don't know what it is, but it's actually that inner
willingness
coming up.
Willingness.
The energies. I think the energies are now ripe for this work to happen, because I feel we have got to cleanse and integrate. I feel a lot more integration now, rather than depending on where the energies are coming from, whether they're ours. And like you said, if they're not, Sarita, the more we raise our consciousness and our vibration, those energies that don't belong to us, that came in when we were feeling weaker, at a lower frequency, they will just dissipate back to where they were. And it's all part of coming into these new energies, because in 5D, we don't have all this fear and this contracted energy. So it's really exciting times if we can step out of that fear vibration, which was the original intent of the summit, because I saw so many people within that fear vibration, and I know it has helped so many people, because I've heard from them. They literally have been so grateful. So I think that's a good time to bring it to a close. I'm so grateful to all the contributions you've made today. Thank you. Was there anything else anybody wanted to add before we finish?
Just one last thing. I was just going to say, to sum it up, sometimes it takes a leap of faith.
Yeah. The fool, Deborah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. A fool's paradise, isn't it, really, once you take that leap of faith? But yeah.
It's so true. And also trust that you will be supported if you do take that leap of faith, more so than ever now. Honestly, I can't tell people, I can just feel the energies are there, like, come on, you can do it, you know, like they're cheerleading us from behind, you can do it. And I think a lot of us have worked through so much density over the decades. We call us the indigos, whatever you want to say, whatever label you want to put on that. And the energies are much lighter now, which is being reflected to how chaotic it is in the external, because the light is getting lighter and lighter. So of course the external is going to try and compete, but it'll just fizzle out on its own, or it'll be integrated. I think that's what's going to happen. It'll all be integrated, and then we can, well, I'm going to say, access these new energies. I believe the new energies are here now. They're there for us to access, and the kind of things that we're doing is actually accessing them. So thank you so much for today, everybody. I've really enjoyed it. It's shown me how much I miss doing the interviews, actually, because I did love doing them for the summit. So thank you, all three of you, and I hope to connect with you all at some future date. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.